cactus!
The first trailer for Minions 3, titled Minions and Monsters, has just dropped. And besides revealing that our favorite little yellow guys will be working side by side with the most terrifying entities from horror lore, it also brought several hidden details that only the most eagle-eyed fans would be able to notice. The trailer kicks off with the Minions on a movie set, apparently acting as extras for a medieval war film where they're supposed to be fighting off a group of Viking barbarians. And right in this scene, we can see that Illumination is keeping its quality control standards sky high. One of the Minions dressed in medieval gear is wearing, for some reason, a red scarf. If you look really closely, you'll notice that the scarf has blue and orange paint stains on it. And if we focus on the fingers of that very same Minion, we'll see that his fingertips are smeared with those exact two colors, indicating that those stains on the scarf around his neck are likely some kind of war paint or something along those lines. We can see him again later, brutally biting a Viking's arm, which we can tell is him because of that same scarf and those paint-smeared fingers. Then we see it's the same Minion who's about to get hit by another Viking when he gets saved by another yellow fellow wielding a massive sledgehammer. This is the same little yellow guy we see shortly after, on top of the back of another future servant of Gru, literally jamming his fingers into a Viking's eyes. Man, he put those paint-smeared fingers right in the guy's eyes. That's just mean. So, did you notice these tiny details? Be honest. Now we're going to show you all the incredible little details you probably missed in the Minions and Monsters trailer. Going back to the scene where the film director introduces the tough-looking, mean-faced Vikings. If you look carefully, you'll notice the guy in the back is doing that thing everyone does, but denies if anyone asks. He's simply picking his nose, thinking nobody's watching. But we saw it. Touché. Right after that, when the barbarians charge toward the Minions to start the battle scene, if you hit pause, you'll notice that in the Viking group, there is a woman, showing that for Illumination, gender representation in war seems to be a woman's right. Furthermore, in that same scene, if you look closely, you'll notice a very curious detail. All the actors are wearing typical Viking helmets with horns, except for one of them, a bald guy who is holding a spear. I just found that detail interesting and wanted to share it with you. The Minions promptly rush into the fight, and only one of them stays behind. I don't understand Minionese very well, but I think he had no clue what was going on. But what I do know, and what you probably didn't realize, is that this Minion is missing one of his teeth in the bottom part of his mouth, which is actually quite unusual to be honest. However, thanks to that and our power of observation, we managed to spot him in another very cool scene in the trailer. Near the very end of the trailer for the new movie, we see a group of yellow beings inside an Egyptian catacomb, and they find a mummy. They were likely looking for a really evil boss, since the movie takes place a few decades before they meet Gru. Notice that the Minion standing next to the mummy's sarcophagus is exactly the same one who was clueless during the battle scene at the beginning of the trailer. And how do we know that? Simple. He's the Minion who has a tooth missing from the bottom of his mouth. And as we said, Illumination never fails when it comes to details. When the mummy opens the sarcophagus, we can see that on the inside of it, there is a symbol of the Egyptian god Anubis, who was, according to them, responsible for bringing mummies back to life. Later, at the end of the trailer, when we see a Minion being tossed against a bookshelf, look, it's him again. The same toothless Minion once more. He's the one who was thrown, apparently by the pink monster. Going back to the scene where the Minions attack the actors dressed as barbarians, out of nowhere, they are holding a bunch of things that make absolutely no sense. For example, we can see one of the Minions holding a pot with a plant. Another one of them is holding a baseball bat. Another little yellow fellow is charging into the attack holding a guitar, while another one has a sink plunger to fight against spears and swords. In fact, this Minion with the sink plunger in his hands is likely the same one who is finishing off one of the Vikings when the director yells, "Cut," on the scene to say he loved the Minions' sincere acting. That's because, for sure, the Minions actually attacked the guys for real. Poor actors. Returning to the scene where the Minions run into battle, I couldn't fail to mention that we noticed one of Gru's future servants is going into the attack with a birthday cake in his hands. Seriously, man, Minions are insanely funny. During the battle sequence, we see two Minions hitting one of the actors in his lower regions, if you know what I mean, using a broom. And right after, in the scene where the Minion commits one of the most terrible acts of war ever by hitting the actor's butt with a giant dart, we can notice two very cool details. The first one is that we can see the body of the Viking woman sprawled on the ground, likely unconscious. The other detail is that while the Minion lands the giant dart in the Viking's butt, notice that behind him there is another Minion sitting down, using a crate as a table and holding a giant mug of beer, as if he were watching a show. If you're into movies, video games, and even animated shows from pop culture, then you definitely don't want to miss the chance to subscribe to the channel right now. Going back to the moment the director cuts the scene, a series of things are happening all at once that I'm sure you didn't manage to catch. For instance, we have two Minions who are forcing one of the actors to eat a massive piece of cheese. While one holds him, the other is stuffing the cheese into the guy's mouth. Another minion was finishing burying one of the Vikings, likely the barbarian woman since we don't see her in the scene. If you look closely, you'll notice that the little yellow being even made a sort of headstone for the person he buried, using a stick and the horned helmet. Another minion is simply torturing one of the poor men. That's because he's biting the poor guy's leg, while both of the man's arms are pinned to the ground, with two horned helmets driven into the dirt to do it. At the same time all of this is happening, we can see two other minions playing at wrestling. While one of the small yellow beings is pinning one of the actors, the other is counting the time on the floor, just like wrestling referees do when a wrestler pins another for long enough to win the match. And lastly, but certainly not least brutal, it seems the director ended the scene at just the right time, since one of the minions was about to drop a massive boulder on one of the actors. Leaving the movie scene behind, let's go now to what is likely the core of the film. The director meets with the minions to talk about the project they created for a new production involving monsters. And in that moment, despite not being fluent in Minionese, which is the official language of Gru's future servants, one of the words he says is known worldwide. He says kaiju. That is the term used in Japan to refer to giant monsters, like Godzilla for example.
What's the movie?
The meeting seems to take place in some kind of restaurant, and apparently, the minions live in the storage room of that very same restaurant. This is because, shortly after, when we see the yellow beings gathered, we can see that the wall of the place where they are has a giant label from a package of ravioli pinned to it, besides the fact that several cans of tomato sauce are also being used to decorate the place, indicating that it's probably an Italian restaurant. As they begin a macabre ritual, we see that the three minions present perform the summoning of a creature very well known in pop culture called Cthulhu, created by the world-famous cosmic horror author named H.P. Lovecraft, which indicates that the book they have in their hands is none other than the Necronomicon itself, the book created in the author's stories filled with spells and enchantments that should never be uttered. Seriously, the minions are completely insane. In the following scene, we discover the name of the restaurant, or former restaurant, where they are performing their macabre ritual by the falling sign that is on the door behind the three crazy minions who are summoning evil incarnate. It was called La Ravioli, and it really seems like La Ravioli's specialty, as the name suggests, is ravioli, since when the monster is materializing in the minion's basement, we can see that a piece of paper with the establishment's secret ravioli recipe ends up sticking to one of the minions' faces. After the little green monster appears, he starts communicating with the minions, and in one of the scenes, we get a closer look at one of the drawings made by Gru's future servants to represent the type of movie they want to make. And if you look carefully, you'll find a reference to one of the most famous minions of all, Bob, who starred in the first Minions movie. This is because we can clearly see that one of the small yellow beings in the drawing is holding a brown teddy bear, and that is Bob's trademark. When the minions and the little green monster are in the cave to free the masters of the mini Cthulhu, we can notice a very interesting object in the background, a kind of Viking shield. The minions and the mini Cthulhu apparently managed to free the terrifying monsters to make their movie, and at that moment, we can notice that apparently one of the monsters, the blue one, is female, since we see her wearing a bra made of giant seashells, along with what appears to be a skirt made of seaweed. When a minion runs away from a gelatinous being that is inside a studio, we manage to find out roughly when the movie takes place. In the background, on the wall, we can see a movie poster where it's written in glorious black and white. In other words, during Minions 3, the movie takes place at some point between the year 1900 and the end of the 1950s decade, which was well before Gru's birth, which was around 1960. In the sequence, we discover that at least one of the minions is religious. This is because in the scene where they are, likely cornered by a monster and dressed in period clothing, if you look closely, you'll notice that one of the little yellow beings is praying. We've reached the end of the video, but we're leaving 2 awesome videos for you to check out even more details and hidden Easter eggs from your favorite movies and shows.